A Russian armored column moves toward Ukrainian positions southwest of Velyka Novosilka. From the ground, it looks like a massive show of force. T-90M tanks leading, BMP-3 infantry carriers spaced behind them, MT-LB transports hauling troops, and a trailing column of fuel and ammunition trucks stretching back toward the tree line. 110 armored vehicles. 3 reinforced battalion tactical groups. Russian command called it a breakthrough operation. From above, it was already a target list. Every vehicle a data point. Every gap between tanks a firing corridor. Every fuel truck a secondary explosion waiting for coordinates. The 33rd Separate Mechanized Brigade of Ukraine had been watching this assembly area. For 11 days, they had pre-plotted artillery boxes, FPV strike corridors, and HIMARS aim points queued and ready. When the column crossed its line of departure on the morning of June 3, 2026, the targeting cell didn't scramble. They executed. A $500 FPV drone, a $4 million T-90M. That asymmetry is the entire story of what happened southwest of Velyka Novosilka, and why Russia keeps feeding its armor into a system that already has their coordinates. Retention point. 0. 30 hook resolution Ts. Here is what this analysis will reconstruct. How Ukraine's 33rd Brigade, working alongside the Kraken 29 reconnaissance group, turned 11 days of patient observation into a 4-phase kill chain that unraveled a $500 million Russian armored push in under 40 minutes. Detection, channelization, kinetic collapse, exploitation. Each phase deliberate. Each phase connected, not a lucky strike, a system executing a plan. The broader context matters. Through late May and early June 2026, Russian command had been probing Ukrainian defensive depth across the southern Donetsk axis. The Velyka Novosilka sector had seen reduced Ukrainian activity, fewer drone signatures, quieter artillery patterns. Russian signals intelligence, monitoring Ukrainian radio nets, read that quiet as a thinned line, a window. What they were actually seeing was a brigade that had gone quiet on purpose. The 33rd Mechanized had pulled back its electronic footprint, reduced drone sorties over the forward line, tightened radio discipline. To Russian reconnaissance, the sector looked like a gap in Ukrainian coverage, an opportunity for the kind of mass mechanized thrust Soviet doctrine had been promising for 80 years. Russian regimental planners committed 3 battalion tactical groups, a mix of T-90M and T-72B3M main battle tanks, BMP-3 infantry fighting vehicles, MT-LB armored personnel carriers, and a logistics tail of fuel and ammunition trucks essential for sustaining momentum through a supposed breakthrough. The plan was textbook late Cold War: mass, speed, and shock. Push armor through before the defender can react. Overwhelm the position before artillery can be repositioned. The problem was that Ukrainian artillery didn't need to be repositioned. It was already waiting. Retention touch point 4. 0-0 stakes bend. The Kraken 29 reconnaissance group had begun systematic observation of the Russian assembly area on May 23rd. Their primary sensor was the Shark reconnaissance UAV, a fixed-wing platform with endurance measured in hours, not minutes, capable of operating at altitudes that keep it outside most short-range air defense. The Shark's electro-optical and infrared payload gives operators a persistent overhead picture: vehicle counts, spacing, movement patterns, and critically, the timing rhythms that reveal when a unit is preparing to move versus when it is simply parked. Over 11 days, Kraken 29 built what targeting cells call a pattern of life file. They knew which routes the Russian vehicles used for resupply. They knew the assembly area's layout. They had identified the fuel trucks, the column's logistical spine, and tracked them to their staging positions at the rear of the formation. Satellite imagery from Maxar-partnered commercial feeds corroborated the vehicle count. Ukrainian signals intelligence, monitoring intercepted Russian regimental radio traffic, provided the final piece: the timing of the operation. The night before the push, intercepted communications showed Russian battalion commanders receiving final movement orders. The 33rd's targeting cell got that intelligence and began final synchronization. Pre-plotted artillery fire missions were confirmed. HIMARS launchers were brought to ready status. FPV drone crews were briefed on their assigned sectors. Mining drone operators were given their corridors. One detail in the intercepted traffic stood out. Russian command had designated a specific route, a hard surface road running northeast from the assembly area, as the primary axis for the lead tank company. That route had been selected precisely because it appeared clear of obstacles. Ukrainian engineers had been watching it for a week. They knew every soft shoulder, every choke point, every bend where a disabled vehicle would block the entire column. That route was about to become a trap. The column crossed its line of departure at approximately 0520 local time on June 3rd. Lead elements were T-90M tanks from the 1st Battalion Tactical Group, modern, well-armored, and in the thinking of Russian planners, capable of absorbing initial contact while the following BMP-3s pushed infantry through any gap. The spacing was tight by Ukrainian standards. Russian doctrine favors maintaining momentum over dispersion, which reduces vulnerability to precision fire but creates exactly the kind of bunched formation that area weapons and sequence strikes are designed to exploit. The Shark UAV was already overhead. Coordinates began flowing to the targeting cell within 90 seconds of the column's cast movement. Retention, not camp point. 50% mid-roll hook. What happened in the next 8 minutes reshaped the engagement before a single artillery shell was fired. Mining drones, commercial-grade quadcopters modified to carry and deploy TM-62 anti-tank mines, began working the lead route. The TM-62 is a pressure plate mine with a metal casing, designed to defeat tank tracks and road wheels. Delivered by drone, it can be placed precisely on a hard surface road with the crew operating from beyond visual range. In 8 minutes, Kraken 29 operators seeded a 200-meter stretch of the primary axis with enough mines to stop the lead company cold. The first T-90M hit a mine at approximately 0528. The pressure plate detonation blew the left track assembly, slewing the tank across the road surface. It didn't catastrophically destroy the vehicle. The T-90M's armor handled the blast. But a 60-ton tank sitting sideways on a narrow road is not a destroyed vehicle. It is a roadblock. The second tank braked. The third closed on the second. In under 2 minutes, the lead company had compressed from a moving formation into a stationary cluster. This is what the targeting cell had been waiting for. Here is the part that doesn't make sense on the surface. Russian tank crews are trained to deal with mined routes. They carry mine clearing equipment. They have procedures. But those procedures require time, dispersion, and the ability to operate without immediate fire. What Kraken 29 had done was not simply mine the road. They had created a trigger. The moment the column stopped, the FPV corridors activated. The strangest part? The Russian column had electronic warfare assets attached, jammers designed to disrupt drone control frequencies. And for the first 6 minutes of the FPV engagement, those jammers performed exactly as designed. Several drones lost their data links and went ballistic. Crews lost control before they could deliver their warheads. The 33rd's drone operators had anticipated this. Their FPV teams were running frequency-hopping protocols, cycling through multiple bands at intervals, too fast for the Russian jammers to track consistently. Not every drone got through, but enough did, and the ones that missed their primary targets served a secondary purpose, forcing Russian vehicle commanders to button up, closing their hatches and cutting their situational awareness at exactly the moment they needed it most. By minute 14, 3 BMP-3s in the middle of the column had been struck by FPV drones. One detonated its ammunition load, producing a secondary explosion large enough to be recorded by the Shark UAV at altitude. The fireball marked the column's center on every targeting screen in the 33rd's Fire Coordination Center. Retention Cont Point. 12K subscribe. This is where modern warfare parts ways with the doctrine Russian command had been running. In 1980s Soviet thinking, a column that takes initial losses pushes through. Mass absorbs attrition. Momentum carries the operation. In the sensor-saturated environment of 2026, that logic doesn't hold. Because the moment the column stops, it stops being a moving target and becomes a fixed one. And fixed targets with known coordinates are what artillery was invented for. Subscribe to Fury Military because understanding why mass keeps failing against sensor-driven warfare is exactly what this channel exists to explain. Every week, another engagement that rewrites the doctrine. The 33rd's 155mm artillery assets, M777 howitzers, and Polish Crab self-propelled guns had been holding fire during the mining and FPV phases. Their missions were pre-plotted against the grid squares the Shark had been refining for 11 days. When the Fire Coordination Center confirmed the column was stationary and the FPV phase had produced the secondary explosion marker, the first artillery missions were called. Walking fire down a column means adjusting rounds sequentially along the target's axis, a technique that requires accurate initial coordinates and continuous observation. The Shark provided both. First salvos impacted near the stopped lead tanks, not to destroy the already immobilized vehicles, but to prevent the mine-clearing team from working. Subsequent salvos walked rearward toward the BMP-3 cluster, then toward the fuel and ammunition trucks at the rear. The ammunition trucks were the critical target. A T-90M can survive many things. A T-90M sitting stationary while the ammunition resupply truck 30 meters behind it detonates. That is a different equation. Ukrainian targeting doctrine in this phase of the war prioritizes logistics vehicles precisely because their secondary effects are disproportionate. Fuel trucks burn, ammunition trucks detonate, and a column that has lost its logistics tail cannot sustain any operation, breakthrough or otherwise. At approximately 0549, HIMARS missiles were fired against two pre-planned aim points. The Russian artillery coordination vehicle, identified in the assembly area during 11 days of observation, and a concentration of fuel vehicles at the rear staging point, approximately 4 kilometers behind the line of departure. HIMARS missiles carrying unitary warheads have a circular error probable measured in meters. Against stationary vehicles at a known location, they function as precision-guided munitions, not area weapons. Both aim points were struck within the first salvo. Retention Cont Point. 16K Identity, Tribal. Here is what this looks like from inside the Russian column. You are a tank crew in the second company. The lead company is stopped ahead of you. You can see smoke, but not the reason. Your radio is full of fragmented reports. The battalion commander is calling for mine-clearing elements to move forward, but FPV drones are still working the corridor and the mine-clearing vehicle's crew is not moving. Your electronic warfare section is reporting drone contacts, but cannot confirm kills. Behind you, something large just detonated. You don't know if it's a fuel truck or an ammunition load, but the radio traffic from the rear is now urgent and confused. You have two choices. Push forward through a mined, drone-saturated corridor toward a stopped lead company, or pull back through artillery fire that is already walking toward your position. Neither option ends well. This is what professional sensor-driven warfare looks like, and why mass alone no longer wins on a battlefield where being seen means being targeted before the first shot is fired. Russian millblogger accounts, posting in the hours after the engagement, described the operation as having encountered prepared Ukrainian defenses of unexpected density. That framing deserves some examination. The 33rd Brigade did not build new defenses overnight. They prepared a targeting architecture over 11 days and waited for the Russian column to enter it. The defenses were not in the ground, they were in the data. Most people assume that a column of 110 armored vehicles represents an overwhelming force advantage. The evidence from this engagement tells a different story. The T-90M is a genuinely capable tank, active protection systems, composite armor, thermal optics. In a direct armor engagement at range, it is a serious problem for most systems Ukraine fields. But the T-90M's capabilities are built for a battlefield where the primary threat is another tank or an anti-tank missile fired from a visible position. They are not designed for a threat environment where mines arrive by drone, FPV strikes come from multiple vectors simultaneously, and artillery fire is being adjusted in real time from a UAV overhead. The active protection system, Shtora, is designed to defeat laser-guided missiles. It cannot intercept an FPV drone on a terminal approach. The composite armor handles direct fire. It does not prevent track damage from a pressure plate mine. The thermal optics help the crew find targets. They do not help when the crew has buttoned up to avoid drone fragmentation and has lost situational awareness of the engagement developing around them. The Ukrainian General Staff reported the engagement as having resulted in the confirmed destruction or immobilization of more than 40 armored vehicles from the column, with battle damage assessment from Shark UAV footage and subsequent ground confirmation. Independent OSINT analysts, examining geolocated footage released in the days following, corroborated the scale of losses, identifying wreckage consistent with at least 6 T-90M type tanks, multiple BMP-3s, and the rear logistics vehicles. Russian operational tempo in the sector collapsed. The follow-on battalion tactical group, approaching from the assembly area, stopped its advance when the scale of the lead group's losses became clear. A British Defense Intelligence update noted that Russian forces in the Velyka Novosilka sector reverted to defensive posturing within 24 hours of the engagement, effectively surrendering the initiative they had spent weeks preparing to seize. The tempo cost extends beyond the vehicles. The ammunition fuel destroyed in the rear staging area represented resupply for multiple days of operations. Replacing burned fuel trucks and their loads is not simply a logistics problem, it is a scheduling problem that cascades through every subsequent operation planned for that sector. The Russian regimental staff that spent weeks planning this push now faces an equipment recovery operation, a casualty accounting process, and the need to explain to higher command why a force of 3 battalion tactical groups failed to achieve its initial objectives against a line they believed was thinned, intercepted communications in the aftermath, reported by Ukrainian signals intelligence, described Russian battalion commanders requesting emergency resupply and medevac. The psychological dimension matters here. Russian crews who survive an engagement like this carry that experience into subsequent operations. The knowledge that a well-prepared Ukrainian defensive sector can absorb a 110 vehicle assault and respond with layered, sequenced fires, that changes how aggressively crews push forward on the next mission. What would you do, sitting in a T-90M, knowing the sector ahead has been watched for 11 days, knowing that the column ahead of you just lost 40 vehicles in under 40 minutes? Push through the kill zone, or hold and wait for orders that may never improve the situation? Tell us in the comments. The answer reveals more about modern doctrine than most analysts will admit. Retention .com point. 19K historical forward. The broader lesson from Velyka Novosilka is not that Russian armor is worthless. It is that armor without sensor overmatch is operating blind against an opponent that isn't. The 33rd Brigade did not have more tanks. They had more data, more time to prepare, and a targeting architecture that connected every element of the kill chain. UAV observation, signals intelligence, mining drones, FPV teams, howitzers, and HIMARS into a single coordinated sequence. That sequence cost Ukraine a fraction of what it cost Russia. The FPV drones that struck BMP-3s in the column's middle cost hundreds of dollars each. The artillery ammunition used to walk fire down the column cost thousands of dollars per round. The HIMARS missiles used against the rear targets cost approximately $150,000 each. Against 40-plus armored vehicles at an average replacement cost exceeding $2 million each, the math is not close. Here is the take that will probably draw disagreement. Russian command cannot claim they didn't see this pattern developing. Every major engagement in this phase of the war has shown that columns entering a sector where Ukrainian ISR has been active for more than a week face precisely this kind of layered response. The decision to push 110 vehicles down a route that Ukrainian sensors had been watching for 11 days is not a failure of intelligence. It is a failure of institutional adaptation. Russian doctrine still treats mass as an answer to precision. The battlefield keeps demonstrating it is not. What this tells us about this phase of the war: the decisive advantage is not the weapon at the end of the kill chain. It is the observation system at the beginning. A HIMARS launcher without accurate, timely coordinates is a very expensive truck. The same launcher with 11 days of Shark UAV data, confirmed signals intelligence, and a trained targeting cell is a system that can neutralize a $500 million armored push in 40 minutes. Ukraine has spent 2 years building that second capability. Russia has spent 2 years feeding armor into it. Can traditional mechanized formations survive a battlefield where being seen means being targeted? That question is not rhetorical. It is the central doctrinal challenge facing every military planning, conventional combined arms operations in a drone-saturated environment. The answer coming from every engagement in this war is that mass without signature management, electronic warfare superiority, and organic counter-UAV capability is not a force. It is a target list waiting to be assigned. The 33rd Separate Mechanized Brigade didn't win this engagement on June 3rd. They won it on May 23rd, when the first Shark UAV began building the picture. The 40 minutes of fires were the execution of 11 days of work. Follow Fury Military for the next analysis, because the adaptation battle is ongoing, and understanding it matters. The purpose of this analysis is not to glorify war, but to understand the military and human realities behind it, because the clearer we see modern conflict, the clearer the value of deterrence, stability, and peace becomes.